As usual, there was a whole lot going on in the animation industry in 1940. This time there was an equal amount behind the scenes as there was in front of the camera. From the Screen Cartoonists Guild to the war effort, the creation of new characters, and the loss of money at the Disney studios, we have a lot to talk about today. So, stand by. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share these videos. But I do want to mention something that's really exciting happening very soon. If you're ever interested in how to draw cartoons, stick around. Future episodes are going to show you exactly what you can do to learn how to be an animated cartoonist. In 1940, the Disney studio kicked it into high gear. They released 2 full-length motion pictures. On February 7th, they released Pinocchio, and on November 13th, they released Fantasia. Both of these pictures were critically acclaimed and, of course, beautifully done. However, they were kind of a box office flop because they didn't really do well in their initial release. However, time always tells, and they did better as the years went on. However, the Disney studio was starting to lay off cartoonists because they were losing money at the time from these pictures not being smashes like they were hoping they would. A group of union representatives formed what is known as the Screen Cartoonists Guild, and their main function was to create better working conditions and unionize the cartoonists at the major studios such as Disney, MGM, Warner Brothers, and so forth. You may think to yourself, well, how bad could the conditions be? Well, besides Disney, which is a studio solely for the purpose of creating animated cartoons, most of the other studios kind of look down a little bit upon their animation studios and didn't really care very much about giving them what the regular part of the studio was receiving, such as good working conditions, proper pay, all those kind of average things that every worker should have. So they were gaining traction in helping the cartoonists have a better life as a career in cartooning. To give you a little bit of an idea of the working conditions for cartoonists, say over at the Warner Brothers studios, the studio themselves found an area on their lot that had a couple of what you would call shacks and put their cartoonists in there. Well, the cartoonists had kind of renamed these areas as Termite Terrace, because it was very buggy, it wasn't very clean, they didn't have great conditions as far as air conditioning or heating, so it was kind of almost the sweatshop type of conditions there. And the studio thought it was just fine because they weren't bringing in as much money as the feature motion pictures, so they didn't care very much for it. But the cartoonists did, and so did the Cartoonists Guild. Well, let's take a step aside the depressing part of animated cartoons and talk about Warner Brothers. Bob Clampett directed the cartoon titled Patient Porky, which was released on August 24th in 1940. This cartoon marked the final prototype of the Bugs Bunny that we know of today. Now, you may wonder, all these directors were talking about Bugs Bunny and working on him and so forth. How did he get the name Bugs Bunny? Well, it was when Bugs Bunny was finally designed as the character that we know of today. He was designed by a cartoonist who was called Bugs Hardaway. And on the model sheet, that piece of paper where Bugs Hardaway drew all the different positions that Bugs Bunny could be in, he wrote at the bottom, Bugs's Bunny. And the name Bugs stuck. And that's how he became Bugs Bunny from Bugs Hardaway. A little bit of trivia there that you might want to keep in mind. For yet another major step in the animation industry, it was on March 2nd that the MGM Studios released a cartoon titled Puss Gets the Boot. And this was the very first appearance of Tom and Jerry. Because these characters were so well known and loved by just about every age group, the studios decided to use these characters for the war effort. By doing so, they would help fund the war by promoting war bonds and also by getting the general public to understand and support the efforts of our troops overseas. So we had characters for propaganda, we had characters for education, and we even had characters for military insignias. What that meant was so many pilots, as an example, were painting these characters on the sides of their warplanes to get a little bit more of a boost in their excitement about winning the war. So if you look back, you might find some of these images of Bugs Bunny or maybe Popeye the Sailor on the side of these fighter planes during World War II. Take a look for it. This is Professor Tom thanking you so much for joining me on my journey through the history of animated cartoons. Don't forget to subscribe and remember, keep your eye on this channel because I'm going to come up with something that is really incredible if you are interested in being an animated cartoonist.
Hi everyone, I'm Danny Dynamite.